Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Well, Tony, we have gotten to spend more time together in person this week than we have in, I don't know, like months. So, eh. I mean, the football's been good. Other than that, it's fine.
Aside from the company, things have been great. Yes, we are on campus for camps, the first two one-day camps at Ohio State on Wednesday and Thursday. Got to see a bunch of prospects, 26, 27, possibly a 25, reclassification in Jahkeem Stewart. So we can talk about all of that if you guys have questions as you come in, and all that good stuff. Recruiting is obviously hot and heavy right now. We did do a live show on the Bo Jackson commitment from earlier in the week, so you can find that at the Buckeye Weekly Podcast or at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle as you at your leisure. But let's go ahead and start with camps, Tom, because I will say I did end up, this just a personal note, ended up with a little bit of a sunburn yesterday. I didn't know why, because I used sunscreen and I got home and I'm like, I got a little red, and my wife was like, well, did you reapply? I'm like, what does reapply? No. Why? I applied. Why should I have to reapply? But we were there for like 6 hours, and apparently the bottle says reapply after like 3 hours, but they should put that, as I told her, they should make that the actual name of the spray, like reapply after 3 hours, because how am I supposed to read this?
The guidance counselor always said that I needed to apply myself. They never said anything about needing to reapply myself. So yes, I used the SPF 100, which was not a thing I even knew existed. But yes, if you are of Northern European descent, that is generally a good idea, so as to not end up looking like a tomato version of Violet Beauregard from the old Willy Wonka movie. So yes, that is, I have finally figured it out that you do in fact have to put on sunscreen.
Well, and I only had like SPF 30 because that was the that was the. Turns out that the cheaper it is, the lower the SPF. I guess that's probably, there's a correlation there. So I got a little bit of a red neck, which is why I'm wearing my Blatz hat to truly fit in with the whole theme. But when you can go into these camps, Tom, and not know anybody, but by the end of the day, you'll know like who are the standouts just because they look different, and they get different levels of attention from the coaches, but you don't even need to see the attention to have some guys stand out. And Jahkeem Stewart, I think, is the first one we can talk about. He was there on yesterday, and listed, I don't know, 6'6", 260, 270, something like that from the New Orleans area. And we were there early, waiting forever for him to come out, and then he appears. It's like, yeah, that must be him, because he's bigger than everybody else. And a group of defensive linemen, when the biggest guy stands out, that he's pretty big. He's one of those first guys off the bus that you hear about.
Yeah, I just punched a picture up of him up on the screen. If you were watching on YouTube, that's just him standing there. And he's one of those guys where you can usually tell, if you're in the Woody and you're looking across the football field, maybe down a ways, you can always tell whether it's a walk-on player or a scholarship player for Ohio State. The walk-on guys look like normal human beings, and the scholarship players look like that is larger than any human being should normally be. And he is already at that level where you looked across, we were waiting for him and looking from across the field and then down a ways. And I was like, oh, there he is. I see him in a crowd of other football players. And he just finished up his sophomore year. He looks like he should be going into, NFL rookie mini camp, or maybe working on his second contract in the NFL. Just an enormous guy. And I think he's listed at 6'6", and he is every bit of 6'6". Sometimes guys are 6'6", and you look at him and you're like, I'm 6'2", and you're, an inch or two taller than me. So unless I have gotten significantly taller since I left home this morning, you are not 6'6". He is every bit of 6'6", and very, very solidly built. Already looks like a college defensive end. and just finished his sophomore year of high school. So, the natural question is, well, if he looks college ready already, does he really need 2 more years of high school? And the answer is, Mark Givler has been looking into this for us. They met with Jahkeem Stewart on Southern Swing. And, he's not reclassifying, but he's doing he set up his class schedule so that if he wanted to reclassify, he certainly could when the time comes. He's working ahead on his classes. So it sounds like that's something that is at least a consideration right now. And, watching him, I don't know that 2 more years of high school football is going to do all that much for him in terms of his development. He may be ready for the next level pretty soon.
Well, just speaking personally, as a former high school person and college person, I'm not doing anything extra and not getting something out of that. Like if I'm not gonna let me just see if I could graduate by my junior year, and then you'd be like, you know what, I'm still gonna stick around for my senior year. Like I'm not gonna do all of that just to not move on from that. So the fact that all of this is happening and there's still time to get it all done. Once you put that kind of into motion, then it's in your head, and that you're already like, I am doing this so that I can do this, and you're giving yourself that option because you want to take that option. And so, barring anything unforeseen, I would expect him to be in the 25 class. And the fact that he is up here on his own dime, I believe, again, and I believe he's up here in March or so, and then to want to work with Larry Johnson as closely as they did. We were there yesterday when we were like 3 or 4 feet away from them as they were doing some working on hand fighting and things like that, and just getting some really hands-on, literally, instruction from Larry Johnson. And then just spending several hours basically with that defensive line group and going through all of those drills. And it is amazing how players will continue to come up here and want to work with him, and on their own dime. They don't need to, but they want to, and they believe it. And not just to see Ohio State or whatever, because I want to go visit Ohio State, it's because I want to go work with Larry Johnson. And that's going to be one of the lasting legacies, the college stuff, of course, but you have so many of these top prospects that don't need to come here to, he's not trying to earn a scholarship. He's trying to improve himself.
Yeah, he is trying to improve himself. And, Larry Johnson, I think, has not only just has been doing this a long time, but has the track record of, he was the guy who was Chase Young's defensive line coach. He was the guy who was Nick Bosa's defensive line coach. Like those are names that really kind of move the needle for guys now, for guys, for the last 10 years, and probably will continue to move the needle for guys, because now he's JT Tuimoloau's defensive line coach. He's Jack Sawyer's defensive line coach. And, there's a look at Stewart kind of running the kind of a warm-up 40. I mean, you look at that and it's like, I would not want to be a running back with that coming at me. Like, no, thank you. Respectfully decline your offer to get tackled. Thank you very much. Larry Johnson is still a name that really, really moves the needle. And I know he's been around for a million years. And I know that there have been, since Joey Bosa, there have been, Larry Johnson's not going to be there for your whole career. Oh, Nick Bosa, Larry Johnson's not going to be there for your whole career. And Larry Johnson was there for Nick Bosa's career and Chase Young's career and JT Tuimoloau's career and Jack Sawyer's career, and continues to bring guys in and then continues to be at Ohio State. And the fact, just his name and his reputation gets these guys to Columbus. And we've seen even guys coming up to Columbus to work with Larry Johnson who don't end up signing with Ohio State for whatever reason. But he is still someone that has a name and a reputation and a history of development that still continues to move the needle for guys.
Yeah, and not just recruits, former players in the NFL will be back. We'll see them all year long when out of season, when we're there at the Woody, and they'll be back in the spring or whenever working out, just doing a lot of stuff that we just saw yesterday, just some hand work and things like that, some pass rushing drills. And he's down there watching them just as if they were a 17-year-old or a 16-year-old prospect that he's trying to sign. And he's very, very instructive. And they get into depth. And I still remember way back when he would talk about, I think, Taekwon Lewis and watching his film and be like, Taekwon, your heel is just up a little. It's not up quite enough in your stance. If you just get it up a little bit further, and we're talking like just raise your heel up an inch, and this is going to help you. Okay, like how do you even have the they didn't have 4K when he was talking about this. They had at best 1280p. And he's like, look at the heel right there. You got to blow it up on a giant screen, and that's the details and the minutia that they get into. I didn't get to watch him run around doing the actual drills. I went over and tried to watch some of the quarterbacks, but from what Mark was saying, like he certainly moves better than you would expect. Somebody's like 6'6", 260. I don't know. Were you over there much? I know you were everywhere taking photos.
Yeah, I was kind of all over the place. And the picture up there right now is one of the hand drills where that's Larry Johnson on the right in the red shirt and the black hat, facing away from the camera, and then that's Jahkeem Stewart facing towards the camera. And there's a lot of this stuff is just hand placement. And okay, if the guy, when you see the guy trying to get the tackle, trying to get his hands up, here's where you need to put your hand. So you see Stewart like putting the back of his hand there to hold the left arm so that he can get outside of the left arm. It's just a bunch of that stuff. And hand placement is something that Larry Johnson talks a bunch about during interviews, and you hear players talking about a bunch during interviews, and what are you working on, all that kind of stuff. This is like Tony was talking about with the heel. It's just this very minute thing, and it's like, you think about a pass rusher. What makes a great pass rusher? Well, you got to have a bull rush. You have a spin. You got to have a great spin move. You got to have all that stuff. This is the little stuff that sort of sets guys apart, and so that's when we're talking about a lot of the drills are doing it, stuff like this. When I did not get to watch a ton of the one-on-ones. There were a bunch of people between us and where he was. I saw him win a couple one-on-one drills. He had one one-on-one drill where a defensive lineman, I'm forgetting the first name, Gray, blocked him, really held his own, and that guy ended up getting a scholarship offer, quite possibly based off of at least partly winning that rep against Jahkeem Stewart. But, he moves really well for a guy his size. You always think, okay, big guy, going to move slowly, maybe going to be hard to move off of his spot, but not going to get a quick burst. That's what you see from some of these Ohio State defensive linemen. That's what they're looking for, is the Tyleik Williams size guy who also can be one of the fastest 10-yard bursts. You're not necessarily going to, he's not necessarily going to win a 100-yard race down the field, but if you're quick, if you're off the ball quick, and that's a combination of quick twitch muscles and, a lot of hard work, but also a lot of technique stuff. That's the stuff that really sets you apart. And you can see with Jahkeem Stewart, you can see all of the raw material, all of the athleticism is all there. And as he continues to define his game, he's only going to get better and better. And, we'll see where he ends up playing in college. Is he an outside linebacker in a 3-4? Is he, an outside rusher in a 4-3? Is he's big enough that he could conceivably kick inside to 3-tech. He could end up, being, you could put him at a jack position if you wanted to. I mean, he could kind of do a little bit of anything, just sort of depending on how he continues to grow. But he is one where you just look at him and you just go, I don't know exactly which college he's going to play for. I don't know exactly which position he's going to play, but I would bet on him being successful wherever he ends up going.
Yeah, I don't know who the first one-on-one rep that I saw him go, but he put somebody on the ground on his back, and it was impressive, and he was impressive. Another guy that I want to talk about from yesterday was Simeon Caldwell, the 6'3" safety from Bowles School in, I believe, Jacksonville. You see a picture there of him. He's listed right now like 6'3", 185, and he's a 2026 guy. He's a top 60 player. I think he's the number 24 player in ESPN's rankings. And really, we only cite ESPN's rankings when somebody that we're talking about is ranked highly or really, really poorly, just to go ahead and point that out. But he is the nephew of Tim Walton, Ohio State cornerbacks coach. And just talking to him yesterday, he had a good day. He was offered a scholarship back in January by Ohio State. He has scholarship offers from Georgia and Michigan, Florida State, schools like that. So he's a legit national guy. And the thought is that he may outgrow safety, which is interesting because like he's already, as you can see, he's a decent sized kid. But Ohio State has an example of what that can eventually be with Sonny Styles. So I think that there's a lot of things that Ohio State can show to him. You got the uncle, you got the example of Sonny Styles. And the first thing he said when I said, what is it about Ohio State? He said BIA, like that, to be part of that. So he still views himself as a safety, but also knows like you're going to continue to grow. And if you're, 6'2.5", 6'3", as just coming out of his sophomore season of high school, entering, good luck staying that small.
Yes. That small. Yes. Yeah. He is definitely someone who right now is college safety size. That's where he is right now. He has another couple of years of high school. He's probably not going to stay that size. We watched Sonny Styles play when he was, I think, a sophomore in high school. This was back during the COVID season in 2020. And it was, he was still pretty skinny at that point, but he was 2 years away from being a college player because he ended up enrolling early. And, if you look at Caldwell, 2 years away from being in college, he's got a lot more growing to do. And so, yeah, I do think he probably ultimately outgrows the safety position, just because if you get just an inch or two taller, you're real tall to be a safety. 6'1", absolutely. 6'2", like, yeah, that's a big safety, but it's, you don't have a lot of 6'4" safeties. And, we'll see if he's done growing, but he's got the Mick Marotti talks about when they're looking at how are they going to, could this guy grow into something else? Could you put more weight on his frame? He's got the kind of broad shoulders that you see out of someone like Sonny Styles. It feels like he could / likely might grow into a linebacker or something closer to the line of scrimmage. Either way, the athleticism was there. He was running, it was a good group of corners, and he was running with corners and flipping his hips and all the stuff you're looking for in terms of a secondary player. And can this guy, get out in space? Can you maintain all of that while you're growing? If you put another 2 inches and 20 pounds on, that's going to be a challenge, certainly. But if you put another 2 inches and 20 pounds on, you're probably playing linebacker and not safety anyway. But either way, it's just, you're looking for the raw athleticism at a camp like this, and you saw it with Caldwell.
Yeah. And you and Mark Givler have talked about, I think, the last couple of morning shows, Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning, about the each day of camp. And so you guys can check that out for much more on how the camps have gone. Ohio State offered their first 2027 quarterback yesterday, Brady Edmunds out of California. He was there. It was interesting watching him. He was working out with Tavien St. Clair, who was there for the early portion of the day, throwing the ball around a little bit. And Tavien's younger brother, who is heading into his freshman season of high school. And it's always interesting to watch legitimate FBS, high level blue chip quarterbacks throw the ball in these camps compared to campers. It's just, because on Wednesday, there's some quarterbacks there. I don't think any of them had any kind of gigantic offers. And it's you see a range of throws. You see, right, like some quarterback campers are like, oh, I think his dad probably made him do this, that sort of thing, where, this is not going to be what you do in college, but it's open for anybody. You can pay to camp. And then you see like it's what we talk about when we compare the Justin Fields to Matthew Baldwin type of thing. The first time we saw them, the passes are just completely different. They're on a completely different trajectory, literally, figuratively. And that's what you saw from these two guys yesterday, as you see in the photo there, Tavien St. Clair and Brady Edmunds, who, Brady Edmunds, 2027 kid. So he just finished up his freshman year. He's listed at 6'5", 220 or 200, and he looks every bit 6'4", 6'5". And then every time we see Tavien St. Clair, you're like, is this guy going to stop growing? Is he ever going to stop growing? And perhaps, but man, from where we saw him the first time 2 years ago or whatever to where he is now, he's a completely different person.
Yeah, not even a question. Because 2 years ago, we saw him at the 7-on-7 camp, and it was him and Ryan Montgomery. And those were kind of the two guys in Ohio who were the quarterbacks that were, potentially Ohio State quarterback size, strength, skill. And Montgomery seemed like he was ahead of St. Clair at that point. And then a year later, St. Clair looked like he had grown 3 inches and put on about 30 pounds of good weight and just looked like a completely different player. And then again, this year looks like a completely different player. It is one of the most dramatic transformations I can remember seeing with a player over the span of just a year or two. He has really, this is a credit to Ohio State for recognizing it early and, viewing him as a legitimate prospect. Because 2 years ago, he was fine at the 7-on-7 camp we saw, but he wasn't anything, it wasn't remarkable by any means. And then boom, he's all of a sudden now, I'll pop up a picture of him, big, strong, great arm, makes all the throws now, has the arm strength and also the accuracy where he's gotten everything just so much more refined, so much more dialed in. And, the ability to come down and work at Ohio State camps as often as you want to, because he lives in Bell Fountain, which is maybe an hour northwest of Columbus, maybe not even that much. So it is a relatively short hop down the road to come down. And, if you want to come and visit and sit in on a meeting, you can come sit in on a meeting. You want to come down and throw, you can come down and throw. If you want to come work out at a camp, you want to come work out at every single camp, you can come work out at every single camp. You want to come in and come down for every single game during the fall, you can do that too. So, you have access to, a little more than you would if you were coming from far away. But yeah, he's very much a prospect who has really, really changed his body, his trajectory, everything more quickly than anyone else. And now he's gone from, the skinny kid from 2 years ago to, could potentially end up as the number 1 overall prospect in the class of 2025. That is not out of the realm of possibility. He's already a 5-star. He's a top 5 player in the class by a number of sources. So, he is someone who has, they did a good job identifying early and, getting on him, staying on him, and, getting him in the fold. And now, if you have a top 5 overall quarterback in the class, he can be something of a Pied Piper for recruits for everywhere else on the team, because the quarterback is generally the leader of your recruiting class. And he kind of has the personality and also has, the locality to be able to be a real leader on any, all of the recruiting visit weekends. Robert Howard says, like and subscribe, the best OSU coverage anywhere. Thank you, Robert. We appreciate that.
Thank you for that. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. And of course, if you have not yet liked this video, please do so. St. Clair and Bell Fountain, Tom, it's an hour if you get stuck behind the wrong people, basically, on the way there. That can be a little bit of a nightmare. St. Clair's he's the number 2 player in 24/7's own rankings nationally, behind Bryce Underwood, quarterback from Michigan, who is headed to LSU, who we have also seen at various camps and who also looks very, very legit. But just the rise that Tavien St. Clair has made has been interesting to watch. The last guy that I want to point out on Wednesday is Jameer Brown, the wide receiver from Wayne, Huber Heights, that has sent Buckeye luminaries such as Braxton Miller to Ohio State. And he's a 2027 kid and had a really good day catching the ball, was put through a workout with several other receivers by Brian Hartline and stood out. And as we talked to him afterwards, and he grew up an Ohio State fan. And one of the things you talk about to players this young, you're like, so, who'd you grow up watching? And you're like, yeah, I don't know. And you realize, like, these guys are still, like, essentially kids. And it's like, what do you think about when you used to watch, say, like Santonio Holmes, or like who, something like that? It's like, let's just don't ask questions that would date yourself. Just stick with the here and now, that sort of thing. But being from Wayne, you would certainly expect Ohio State to be the heavy favorite here. And as I was, after I talked to him, I'm writing up the interview and I'm doing some research on him. He lists a 4.3 140 in his huddle bio, but more impressively are his track times. He's got a confirmed like 10.51, 100 meters, and also holds see if this is impressive to you, Tom, the national record for the 60 meters for a freshman. And when I say national, that means all of the United States of America. And the record means the fastest ever on record So
yeah, that feels good. I mean, you think about the standard to get offered by Brian Hartline. Brian Hartline is generally just shopping in the, he's not going in the used car lots. Like he is going to the luxury car dealership and taking his pick of whichever of that year's version, luxury car wide receivers he wants, sports car versions of wide receivers he wants. So to offer an in-state prospect where that in-state offers, those are harder to back out on. Those are harder to slow play. If you make an offer to an in-state guy, you've got to essentially be ready to accept that commitment whenever. So for him to be offering a 2027 in-state wide receiver on the first day of camp of the summer, that's pretty amazing. And I'm going to draw your attention to something on this picture. You're looking at Brown, who's catching the pass. I want you to look in the back, that behind him, the guy in the dead center of the picture in the red shirt, that's Tim Walton. He's watching the corners. Right next to him on the right in the gray shirt is Ryan Day. Right next to him in the red shirt is Brian Hartline. They are watching these guys very closely. This is the one-on-one winner-loser portion at the end of the day. And they are matching up the best corners at the camp that day with the best wide receivers at the camp that day. And Jameer Brown he just made play after play in that period. And it was, this is good competition. Even the guys who are not getting Ohio State offers, there's generally guys there who are going to end up going to Purdue or going to Illinois or going to Michigan State. Not everyone, there are tons of talented guys who don't end up getting Ohio State offers for whatever reason. These are the guys you're going to be playing against in college. And if you're dominating them in the camps, when you're just wrapping up your freshman year and they're going into their senior years potentially, that really tells you something. He was someone who just every time you looked, even in a relatively talented group of wide receivers, looked really impressive. There were other guys who are going to be Big Ten caliber wide receivers at that camp, and he really stood out even among them at times. So yeah, that's to earn an offer after your freshman year as an in-state prospect from Brian Hartline, that says an awful lot. I don't know that they even have 2027 rankings out yet, but I have a feeling, if he keeps progressing the way he has, this is going to be another one of these Brian Hartline offered early, very few other offers, and then this guy ends up as a top 15 player nationally in his class, and everyone goes, how does he keep doing this? And it's like, well, it turns out he's got a pretty good eye for talent, and when you're Brian Hartline and you have the track record for developing, everyone wants to come to your camp, and everyone wants to go earn an offer from you, because that's something that carries a lot of weight among other programs as well.
And he's somebody that has gotten better in terms of catching the ball over the last year. He's really worked on that. He was asked, being a 2027 kid, just coming off of his freshman season, were you intimidated in this environment being one of the younger guys? And he's basically like, I don't get intimidated at work. It's like, okay, all right. this is what I do.
He was on a high school team that had a couple other power conference kind of wide receivers, D1 wide receivers on the team. And as a freshman, he led the team in receiving. I mean, that tells you a lot, that a freshman going into high school, you think about your freshman year and you're the little kid and everyone around you is bigger, and people in the upperclassmen are driving and they've got mustaches and beards and they're a head taller than you, and it's very intimidating. And he goes out in a talented wide receiver room and leads them in receiving as a freshman. That's really, really impressive. And oh, by the way, as Tony mentioned, set the national record for the 60 meters. Also, not bad.
Not bad. It's not 100 meters, but I guess it's acceptable. Just go run this.
You're not backed up your own goal line that often. You don't need to run 100 meters. Come on.
This is not Super Tecmo Bowl. Is that what you're saying? So he was the first 2027 Ohio offer. Like you said, if you're going to offer these guys, you got to be able to be ready to accept it. Now, he does already have offers from Michigan, Penn State, Notre Dame. And those are places that if we're going to get in on an Ohio kid, we better get in early just to kind of, stick our nose in there. But Marcus Freeman Notre Dame has his attention. Marcus Freeman, a Wayne graduate, went to the same high school. So obviously there is a connection there as well. But man, you got to imagine that Ohio State's going to be hard to beat here. And it'll be up to Brown to just continue his trajectory, because we've seen Ohio kids get offered as freshmen under Urban Meyer and not continue on, and sometimes then those offers will eventually go away. I don't expect that to happen here. Also, his huddle highlights as a freshman, you can see 3 kickoff return touchdowns. Now, I know that doesn't apply to Ohio State in terms of
legal.
And honestly, by the time he gets to Ohio State, if he signs with Ohio State in 2027, they're going to have the NFL kickoff rule. So you're going to want probably more of a running back doing that. But still, it showcases some speed and his agility. Anybody else that you wanted to mention from camps at all? No, Victor Singleton.
Yeah, Victor Singleton. Yeah, 2026 cornerback out of Toledo Central Catholic. Yeah, he was very impressive as well. He earned an offer. He's a guy who, at the beginning of the week, I put a thread up on our board for, here's the first day of camp, and we'll put all of our pictures and our videos and answer your questions and all that kind of stuff here. And I had him in the first post of that thread before we showed up as like, this is the guy I'm the most interested to see, because he had a top 50 ranking nationally, I think 247, but didn't have an offer from Ohio State yet. And, Mark Givler talked about the fact that in the state championship game last year, he was, maybe the best player on the field, on a field that had a lot of other D1 players. And that was a sophomore year, Victor Singleton. So I was really interested to get a chance to see him up close. And I think Tim Walton probably was as well. And he really showed out. He earned an offer. That's one where I think, that would be, Tim Walton is another guy who, it is not that easy to get an offer from Tim Walton, because it's not like he offers 2 guys a year, but the guy he's offering, for 2025 right now, they have the number 1 and number 2 cornerbacks in the class already committed. They're going after the number 4 cornerback in the class, Dorian Brew, who may end up as a safety or as a corner. We'll see. But, that is very exclusive company. We saw really, really good in-state corners at camp this week who are going to play high-level power conference football, but just can't get an offer from Ohio State, because it's like, well, you've already got Devin Sanchez, you already got name offered, you might get Dorian Brew. I mean, there are only so many chairs before, when the music stops. And so it is not easy to get an offer as an in-state guy from Tim Walton. And so, yeah, Victor Singleton earning that offer. I was really interested to see him in person. I watched him. I thought, this looks like a guy who should be able to play at Ohio State. And the Ohio State coaching staff apparently agreed.
Preston Bowman is another one. Pickerington North wide receiver, 2025 guy, who's a 3-star and he's here. He nobody could stop him pretty much from what I saw. He was very successful in the composite. He's the number 1,233 player in the nation. He's the number 179 wide receiver in the nation. He's the number 56 player in Ohio. He did recently get an offer last month from Michigan, but as smaller offers as well. But it is always interesting to watch these guys that maybe aren't going to be playing at Ohio State, but are still trying to get that offer, and then playing really well against guys who have offers, bigger offers or Ohio State offers. They kind of take that challenge on, and you see them perform. And I think coaches love that aspect of it as well, because it's a challenge to everybody. That was actually one of the things that I talked to somebody about yesterday, about how Ohio State's camp is sometimes different than other camps, in that you're competing not just in like the one-on-ones, but when you're doing your own drill, you're competing against somebody else to get it done quicker, to get it done faster. You see Preston Bowman there if you're watching on YouTube. And so he was a guy that I was impressed with. Like he looks like a solidly built dude. He's listed at 6 foot 190, and probably one of these Ohio kids that's going to go somewhere and do well. And back in the day, it would be one of those guys that Urban Meyer would be like, how did we let him get out of state?
Yeah, he was someone who I was just standing in the end zone and just taking pictures of everyone. And this kid in the Pick North shirt just kept making plays and just kept beating guys. And this was one where he went over the middle and just beat the guy over the middle. And that's a defensive back way in the background there as he's going right towards the end zone. There was another one where he had a nice toe tap in the corner of the end zone. Guy just was consistently beating whoever was covering him. Yeah, this is one where, again, you can be a very, very, very good player and not get an offer from Brian Hartline, because Brian Hartline is just basically shopping in the 5-star aisle, more or less. And, not that he's recruiting off of the rankings. He's generally 18 months ahead of the rankings, but the guys always end up as 5 stars one way or the other, it seems like. And the production at the college level ends up that way as well. Preston Bowman is one of those guys who I had the exact same thought, and I saw Kevin on our board. I posted a tweet about him and posted some pictures about him and talked about how impressive he was. And Kevin said he's one of those guys, exactly what you said, where Ohio State fans in 2026 are going to be going, how did they let this guy go? And he's going to be very successful wherever he is. He is. I mean, you look at him; he's a very physically developed kid already. Going to has the he's not a 4.25 guy or anything like that, but just very, very good, well-rounded, strong wide receiver who is going to be a good player at the Big Ten level, I think, in college. And that you can't keep all the puppies, basically. Like, there are a lot of talented players that come to Ohio State camps every year, and they have to make some very difficult decisions. And sometimes they're right on them, and sometimes they're wrong on them. I mean, you go back to Kenneth Grant. They really wanted, Kenneth Grant wanted to come to Ohio State and didn't end up coming to Ohio State because they didn't end up having a spot for him. But then he's now a really important part in the middle of that Michigan defensive line. Abdul Carter from Penn State, camped at Ohio State, didn't end up getting an offer and ended up going to Penn State and turned into a Big Ten freshman of the year. I mean, you don't get it all. You don't get it right 100% of the time. No one gets it right 100% of the time. But, the track record in terms of Ohio State, in terms of finding guys, identifying guys early, and then developing those guys is pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty good. And so the camps are done for this week, and then they'll start back up there's camps Tuesday and Thursday next week, and then a 7-on-7 tournament competition on Wednesday in the middle there, sandwiching those two. So we'll be back over there. I am looking forward to watching Dia Bell, the number 2 quarterback in the 2026 class from American Heritage, who as Ohio State obviously in the mix. He's coming up to camp and see the place, and he's been a guy that has been on OSU's radar, and we've talked about him. I don't know if we've talked about him, but Mark and you have talked about him plenty. And from, like I said, American Heritage, which has sent Brandon Innes, Torrance Gibson, as just a couple of names there to Ohio State. So not an unfamiliar place, but I think he will be here on Tuesday. Looking forward to seeing him if we can get to see him from our vantage point. But they need to start finding their 2026 quarterback. I know we're still 6 months out from signing day of just 2025, but their top guys are going off to other schools. Like Jared Curtis goes to Georgia. Will Griffin commits to Florida. So we saw Will Griffin last year at this time at Ohio State, and he was really, really impressive. Faison Brandon, who is another top 5 quarterback, will be on campus at some point this month, I believe, and others will as well. So this is going to be a really good opportunity for Ohio State to get a firsthand look and then, reassess their board at this point. Because, they have their board right now is what they think it is. But I wonder if things will change once they get them all on campus this month, and then how hard they go to try to get that commitment before these guys hit their junior seasons of high school. Crazy.
Yeah, and before we get to that, I just want to shout out the super chat from Omar Austin. Happy National Donut Day, boys. Great stuff as always. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Tom, let's talk about the donuts, and then we'll get back to lesser things. The yeast donut is superior to the cake donut. The cake donut certainly has its place. We would all agree with that. But for my money, and it is my money, can't beat a Krispy Kreme. It's just a simple glazed donut. You can eat 40 of them, and you don't feel bad about it. You try to eat 40 cake donuts, Tom, with all of these sprinkles and frostings, you're going to feel terrible about yourself.
See, I am not a huge Krispy Kreme person. We do not have a Krispy Kreme locally here out east of Columbus. We have a really nice. You know, you have your Dunkin' Donuts and your yada yada yada, but we have Jolly Pirate Donut is the it's I think a local chain out here. Very, very good donuts, and yes, mostly yeasty donuts, but they will do a mixture of yeast and cake, and you can, you know, it's a little something for everyone. And yeah,
In the same donut?
no, not in the same donut. Just, you know, you've got your very impressive wall of different styles. And yeah, I guess I generally tend toward the yeast, but it really depends on the place, really depends on the style of donut. Sometimes, you know, if I'm looking for a donut to go with like a hot apple cider in the fall, you got to go cake there. That's not even a question. It's a little bit situational to me. You got to have a little bit more of a nuanced view, Tony. We can't be polarized in our donuts in the way that we are polarized as a society in our politics. We must accept that there are validity to different views when it comes to donuts and different situations.
No.
Super chat from Ryan Dawes. Are the OSU players on break during these camps? No, very much not. No. They are working out. They have team workouts. They've put out some social media stuff on that, but if you get to camp a little early, they're generally working out, you know, running, doing some you know, training, that kind of stuff. But then during the camps, the Ohio State players are actually out there working the camps. They are, you know, so yesterday with the tight ends, they had a bunch of really highly ranked tight ends out there in terms of campers. And then there are a bunch of Ohio State tight ends out there working, demonstrating the drills. So G. Scott is showing them how to hit the blocking sled, and Bennett Christian is showing him how to do this drill with, you know, you got to block the medicine ball this way. And even, you know, some of the true freshmen, Max LeBlanc, and the true freshman tight end, was out there. But Tyleik Williams was out there with the defensive line. Hero Canoe was out there with the defensive line. Saw, let's see, linebackers. I'm thinking Peyton Pierce I saw out there, and
so Tavien Henderson out there.
Yep, Tavien Henderson out there with the running backs. I mean, you've got a lot of these guys out there, you know, just helping out and demonstrating. And then, you know, they will announce over the loudspeaker that, you know, hey, there's Tavien Henderson. And I think that's a little bit of a, you know, you see guys posing for pictures with campers after the, you know, at the end of the day. That, you know, I think that's part of the draw as well. Because, yeah, sure, the guys who are coming to compete for an Ohio State offer are coming to compete for an Ohio State offer. There are guys from just small town Ohio high schools who are coming to, like, hey, I got to talk to Carlos Lachlan. I got to talk to Larry Johnson. Larry Johnson watched me go through a drill. You know, hey, I got a picture with so-and-so. Hey, I got a picture with Tavien Henderson, whatever it is. That's part of the drill as well. I mean, these guys know that. These guys know that, you know, they are kind of role models for people. And, you know, that's one of the draws to get guys to come to these camps. So, yeah, so they are out there. It's not everyone. I know I heard Devin Brown was out there yesterday. I didn't see Devin Brown, but I heard them announce that Devin Brown was out there. So
I saw Will Howard out there on Wednesday.
Okay.
And as I mentioned to somebody else, like, he is a big dude. Like, he is, you know, like, he's listed at 6'5", 240. It's like, yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's prototypical quarterback. But then you stand like next to him or in his vicinity, and you're like, that is a big dude. It is interesting watching the players, the current Buckeyes help out. Like watching Tyleik Williams and Jack Sawyer with Larry Johnson yesterday, doing the hand fighting and the hand drills, and Tyleik just like going through the motions of everything while other people are doing it, you know, kind of like mouthing the lyrics to everything. And then they would come back over and to him, and he'd be like, you know, showing them, no, do it this way, or getting the next guy ready, saying, you see what he's doing there. And so it's just, they're really, it's amazing how invested some of these guys get when they don't need to be, but they've all been here before doing this. And this is the paying it forward aspect of things, because when Tyleik Williams was doing this in 2019, couldn't do it in 2020, but you know, whoever in 2019, you've got, you know, Chase Young helping you out, you know, Davon Hamilton helping you out. And now you're in that same position to do the same thing. So it is cool to see them all do this.
Yeah, I think I saw Ty Hamilton out there as well. So a little bit of a Hamilton to Hamilton passing of the torch there in terms of working at Ohio State football camps. So, okay, so back to the 2026 quarterbacks. this is absolutely not a, oh boy, are they in trouble kind of situation. They're fine. They're still in on a bunch of the top quarterbacks, and Faison Brandon could end up being the top quarterback in the class. And that was someone that Mark and Kevin saw on Southern Swing. We talked about him a bunch on one of the morning shows a couple weeks ago, but he'll be back. So, this is not a, oh boy, this is a problem, or oh boy, they're late to get their quarterback for 2026. But this is typically when you start seeing that process happen. This is about the time last year when they got a commitment from Tavien St. Clair, the 2025 quarterback. That's kind of the traditional timing. And, we have seen plenty of Ohio State quarterback cycles where they get a guy and then it doesn't pan out, and they, sort of mutually agree to part ways, or you end up having a late flip or something like that. And then you end up chasing someone late, and they've, Devin Brown was a relatively late addition to the class. Lincoln Keenholz was a relatively late addition to the class. CJ Stroud was late-ish addition to the class. So, it depends year to year. I do wonder if, I've talked about this in the context of the wide receivers. You look at, okay, they have Aaron Nolan and Julian Sayin for the class of 2024. Julian Sayin was the top, I believe, quarterback in the class. And so you've got the 2024 top Clair and the quarterback in the class. 2025, you have Tavien St. Clair, who is, potentially, you said, the number 2 player overall in the class, according to some sources. And then, 2026, none of these guys are like running away from competition, but there's probably an easier path to the playing field, and that's going to be appealing to some guys. So, how long is Julian Sayin going to stay at Ohio State? Is he going to be there 3 years and off to the NFL? How long is Tavien St. Clair going to stay at Ohio State? Is he going to be 3 years and off to the NFL? That can be something that can be off-putting for a 2026 guy. You want to go somewhere maybe where there's an easier path to the playing field. But, you look at Ryan Day's quarterbacks classes year after year after year, and they still continue to stack these 5-star quarterbacks pretty much every season. So apparently the allure of playing for Ohio State and competing for national championships and learning under Ryan Day and getting developed for the NFL and kind of being the next guy up to be that first-round quarterback pick, that's, pretty appealing, I guess.
Another name before we wrap up in 2026 quarterbacks is Brady Palmer, who's a 3-star guy from California, has an Ohio State offer, they are his biggest offer. He has the Buckeyes number 1. I believe he's going to be here on Tuesday, the same day as Diabell throwing. And this is one of those where you have an offer, but could you commit? And when you still have this big group of quarterbacks and while some are coming off the board, they still have a bunch of guys that they're very much in on. What happens if a guy is like, okay, I want in, and you're not necessarily like, if they're not on your top 2 or 3 of the board where you're willing to sacrifice everybody else, it could create an issue. But they don't hand these things out willy-nilly.
They do not. And I know we got to get rolling pretty quick, but I think this was an interesting comment from Jim James. He says, as a UGA fan who also likes OSU, you have to face the fact that a lot of these guys are going to transfer out once they see their position competition, as in, I quote, I'm not going to wait behind those guys. And I think that is kind of true. And that's Georgia and Ohio State are 2 of a very few programs, very small number of programs that basically are recruiting in the same way, which is you just bring everyone, you bring in as many guys as you can, and you just accept the fact that, yes, sometimes a Bear Alexander is going to not have a clear path to the playing field on the defensive line, even though he's very good. And he's going to transfer out to USC and be a very good player. And that's just kind of the cost of doing business. And you're going to take in, Ohio State is going to bring in a Noah Rogers as a wide receiver, very talented player who got to Ohio State, spent a year there, wanted to head home, but also really didn't play a whole heck of a lot in his true freshman season. And that's probably a part of wanting to head home. That's just kind of the price of doing business right now. And with the realities of modern college football, the path out is not nearly as punitive as it used to be. It used to be you'd have to sit a whole year, which was really detrimental to your career on the whole. Now, if you go somewhere and you don't, it doesn't pan out, that's fine. Move on, go be Caleb Brown at Iowa and be a very good wide receiver and, move your career on there. So yeah, I think that's true of a lot of guys at a lot of positions at schools like Georgia and Ohio State.
I'm pretty fascinated to see what Julian Fleming does at Penn State this year as their presumed number one target, which is the reason why he left Ohio State is like, I'd really like to be the primary target for once and in my career before I'm done playing college. And so I'm interested to see what he looks like as that guy. We've seen him be solid complementary at times but never as that one guy that you're just going to go to and focus your passing game on him. So I'm fascinated to see what he does. Hope he does well there. So that's going to do it. Go ahead and hit the thumbs up on this YouTube if you're watching. We would appreciate that. We do appreciate the comments and the questions and always the super chats as well. And as a reminder, you can find us always at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We are in the last stages of our annual spring sale for an annual subscription. So if you want to jump on that before it goes back to full price, I would recommend doing that now. And as I said, we've still got 2 weeks of camps to come, and then we are like 45 days out from Big Ten Media Days. And once Big Ten Media Days are here, the season is practically upon us, like a house dropped on you in the middle of Oz. It's the best thing. But so that will do it. I want to thank you all for tuning in as always, and we will talk to you guys later.